It was to me. I was almost like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. But luckily, we have Google Documents, and people at Google saved the day last week. I know we got food cooking, and I will make this as fast as possible. It won't be fast. I'm just letting you know up front, but it'll be as fast as possible. This is the third week in the series that's inspired by First Peter. I'm flying up here at 30,000 feet. There's a lot of details in First Peter that I'm not really digging into from the pulpit, but the messages are inspired by First Peter, and it's no different today. When I was growing up, one of my favorite songs, and we'll sing it here in a few minutes, is "This World Is Not My Home." And I know most of us know that song, if not have it memorized. I've sang it thousands of times. It's got to be. But this world is not my home. I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know, I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. I loved that song growing up. Loved it. My preacher back home was an incredible singer. He would teach this song at a TCC conference. TCC is Teenage Christian Conference that our church would put on every fall, August, September. And we would have thousands of teenagers in our auditorium, packed full. We would put extra chairs along the aisles, along the wall, in the back. It was standing room only in there. And we would sing this. I remember the day that we were learning a new version of this song, and he would say, "And I can't feel at home in this world anymore," and getting us to pause and make these exaggerated melodies. That when you sing that song, you can't help but just get excited and stomp your feet. But you can't do that at Church of Christ, remember, because that can't stop your feet. That sounds like a drum or some other musical instrument. So we don't do that, but you definitely wanted to, for sure. That song was awesome to sing. But I tell you this, I don't know that I've ever sung that song and actually meant what the lyrics were saying. I have always felt at home in this world. Isn't that something? I've never really truly wanted to be anywhere else. I haven't felt that I'm just passing through. I grew up in a wonderful home. Don't get me wrong. My dad drove a truck in the oil field. He made good money. My mom was a school teacher. She made not good money, but she made a living for us. My dad died when I was 11, so it was just me and my mom. My older two brothers were already living on their own, so just me and mom. From 11 years old till I graduated from college. Didn't have hardships. Didn't know if there were. I didn't know it. We'd go out to eat. We'd go to restaurants. Probably ate food I probably didn't deserve. Got a lot of things. I made good grades. I had good friends. Was good in sports. I felt at home in the world. Always have. And as an adult, not all of my plans have gone according to plan. There's always, I've experienced hardships. I've stumbled from time to time, and I've failed and embarrassed myself plenty of times. But my adult life in general has been pretty easy. But again, I've never felt that this world was my home. Was not my home, I'm sorry. And I'm just passing through, or that I needed to be somewhere else. There have been moments in my life, occasions as a Christian, when I didn't feel like that I fit in with what was going on around me. Last January, my work sent us to Vegas because we hit a lot of goals at work that we had to hit in order for us to go. So they sent us to Vegas. Well, this past year, I guess it was 2 Januaries ago, not this January, but January before. This January, just the bosses went this year, but 2 years ago, everybody got to go. And I definitely felt like I was in a weird place. This was the first time I've ever been to Vegas. But I tell you, walking the streets in Vegas, this world is not my home. I'm looking for the next place to go eat some days, though, walking down the sidewalk. It is different there. But I wasn't thinking that I'm going to pass through all of this and go to heaven, right? I was thinking to myself, I just want to get through this corner, this section of sidewalk, and so I can get to where I need to go. But really, other than that, I haven't felt that this world isn't my home. So when we say this world's not my home, if by home you mean God's creation, this wonderful place that He has created for us, He's called it good when He made it. You know, we're supposed to be good stewards, right, of this wonderful world. If that's what we mean by this world is not my home, then I think that song's got bad theology, right? If that's what we're meaning by this world is not my home. Because our goal as Christians is not to live and then to die and then go somewhere else. That's not our goal. Because God's created this world and He's redeeming it through the promise of the gospel to restore all of this stuff. He's going to give us a new world, a new heaven, and a new earth. He's going to restore it the way it's supposed to be. So our goal is to be like Jesus, to live like Jesus, to die like Jesus, and to be raised up in God's renewed, recreated, and restored world. This world is our home, and it will ever be so when God's finished recreating it, restoring it. Now, if we say this world is not my home, by world, you mean something else like our way of life in this world. The way of life that's fallen or broken or sinful people build, the cultures and the systems that don't honor God. The brokenness and evilness that we see on a daily basis, by that definition of world, then I absolutely agree. That is what is not our home. All Christians should be able to sing that this world is not my home with gusto. If you've seen, what is that song? It was totally off subject, but the blind side, and she comes in. Do you like Tennessee? No. I hate them with gusto. Anyways, I don't know why I did that. That's just the way I do things. But all Christians should be able to sing, this world is not my home, in the terms of what we described as the world. You should be able to sing that with gusto. I'm looking for something else. I'm looking for something better. Which brings us to 1 Peter. 1 Peter writes this letter to a group of Christians that are in a remote region of the Roman Empire, 2,000 years ago or more, and he describes them as strangers and aliens and exiles. Not because they don't belong in God's world, you understand? They belong in the world, because their way of life doesn't belong. Is why they're strangers and exiles. Their way of life doesn't fit with the way that their neighbors are living their lives. They don't know Jesus. And in his letter, the words that Peter uses to describe this different way of life for Christians, they keep Christians from fitting in. These words that Peter uses. And one of those words that he uses is the word holy. We just got through singing about that. Holy. Don't know if you think about the word holy very much, but we're going to read from 1 Peter, and we want to talk about it a little bit. So in chapter 1, verse 13, and we're going to read through the end of the chapter, and then we'll skip to chapter 2 before we get to the end of chapter 1. You'll see. Therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed at his coming. As obedient children, do not conform to the evil desires you had when you lived in ignorance. But just as he who called you is holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy because I am holy. Since you call on a Father who judges each person's work impartially, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. For you know that it was not with perishable things such as silver or gold that you were redeemed from the empty way of life handed down to you from your ancestors, but with the precious blood of Christ, a lamb without blemish or defect. He was chosen before the creation of the world, but was revealed in these last times for your sake. Through him you believe in God, who raised him from the dead and glorified him, and so your faith and hope are in God. Now that you have purified yourselves by obeying the truth, so that you have sincere love for each other, love one another deeply from the heart. For you have been born again, not of perishable seed, but of imperishable, through the living and enduring word of God. Now we're going to jump to chapter 2. Therefore, rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind. Like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation. Now that you have tasted that the Lord is good. Now the word holy is one of those serious words in the Bible. Right? It shows up often in the scriptures, and we dare not ignore it. Because one of the reasons it's so important is because the word holy is used to describe God himself. It's a description that God uses for himself, and it's easy to define. We all probably know the easy description of the word holy. It means to be set apart, to be distinct. So to use it to define God is easy. God is set apart from everything in creation. There is everything that God created, and then there's God. And God is unlike anything else in creation. God is different. He is categorically and fundamentally different. God is holy. And holy is not an attribute of God. You need to understand. God doesn't have holiness. He is holy. Took me a long time to figure that out. He doesn't portray holiness. He is holy. Holiness is God's essence. Holiness is what makes God God. For if we're not holy, if God were not holy, then God would not be God. This is how important this word is. And Peter says to followers of Christ, you that are called to be holy, set apart, different, just the way God is set apart and different. This morning, I want to make a few observations about what we're reading in 1 Peter, about this calling to be holy as God is holy. What's that mean? What's that all about? What kind of holiness is Peter talking about? Well, my first observation is that it's relational rather than religious. Holiness. Another way to say that the kind of holiness Peter is talking about and to which these Christians are called is identity-driven holiness. It comes from who we are in Christ. It's not rules-based. We were touching on that this morning in Bible class a little bit. And religious holiness tends to be rules-based. Here's what you can and can't do. If you want to be holy, here's your list. How many times have you heard Lane talk about creating a list? I don't know about you, but it's a lot. Okay? Not that he's trying to show his holiness through his list. I think his list is more what I need to accomplish today. But the word list is definitely associated with religious holiness. A list of rules, traditions, religious traditions for holiness that were rules-based. Don't drink. Don't smoke. Don't chew. Or date girls that do. At least that's the way I heard it. Don't dance. Don't watch R-rated movies. For that matter, don't watch PG-13 movies. Don't listen to heavy metal music. You can tell what generation I grew up in. For older generations, you can't play cards. Dominoes are fine, but you better not play cards. Play all the dominoes you want. But no shorts. Do not wear shorts. Actually, don't wear jeans to church either. That's how I grew up. Rachel shared a story with me for this lesson about when she went to church camp in high school. No, you can't wear shorts. It's middle of Texas. She lives here in Colorado, drives to Texas, hot and humid. No shorts. Can't wear shorts to church camp. Right? Not even the boys. There was this belief that the knees, I guess, exposing your knees is going to lead people astray. I get it. You know what I mean? I mean, these are things that it's stuff that we go through. But you're going to church camp to get closer to God, but I have a feeling that it felt a little bit more like hell than it did heaven with that experience. Just my opinion. But it's horrible. We can overreact. We could reject all of the rules-based holiness, and we could miss an opportunity of the point, right? Because there's a behavioral component to holiness. We can't just throw everything out the window and say, well, we can't do that because I don't want to do that. It's not how it works. Because how we live matters, right? How you live matters. There are some behaviors and activities that Christians never participate in. Am I right? There are some behaviors and activities that Christians should participate in. How we live matters. That's one of the big ideas of 1 Peter when you read it up here at 30,000 feet. Peter's starting point for talking about holiness isn't, here's your list. It's not how he starts his conversation with these Gentile newbie Christians, is it? His starting point for holiness is that you have a relationship with God. That's what he's telling them. To be holy like God is holy, and to become the kind of holy, you have to conform your heart to God. You have to know God. You got to be connected to God well enough in such a way that you are willing to see other people the way God sees them. You have to draw close enough to God so that your will is shaped by His. You see that it's relational. This kind of holiness cannot be attained by following rules, right? It's not external holiness from the outside, it's internal holiness. It starts from the inside out. It starts when you have a changed heart and a mind that then leads to changed behavior. That sets you apart as a follower of Jesus Christ. You may look different from your neighbors, different from those people who don't follow Jesus as their Lord. The only way for us to even be able to approach this kind of holiness, it's relational holiness. The only way that we can approach that kind of holiness is that we have got to be born again. These connections throughout the first part of the letter, Peter keeps using this born again language. Okay, I'm going to show this to you. He associates and connects it with every kind of holy behavior Christians are engaged in and called to do. He begins in the letter in verses 3 and 4, chapter 1. What does he say? God has given us a new birth. Right? Into a living hope and into an inheritance. Then he says later in verse 14, obedient children. And then in verse 17, all as children call on their Father. Right? And then in verse 23, he repeats it. You must be born again. And then again in chapter 2, verse 2. Like I said this morning, newbies, but it's newborn babies. He's using this language, this born again language, the family language, the father-child language to make a point. He's making a point. Peter's logic seems to be when calling Christians to be holy, the logic is you need to be born again. That's Peter's logic. You have a new father. You have a new family. You have a new inheritance. And because you've been born into a new family, under the influence of a new father, your Father in heaven, you're going to learn a new way of life in the household of God. It doesn't start with the rule. It starts with the relationship. You are a new person in a new family with a new father, called to a new way of life. And this new way of life is going to be different than the old way of life that you had, that you learned from your first family, your mom and your dad. We call that your family of origin, where you came from. You were born and raised in this family because you learned what to do and what not to do from them. Because our family of origin, especially our parents, influence us on how we live our life. The way we talk, I'm from Texas. I can't get away from that. The way we act, the way we view the world, our habits, our personality quirks. Even when we don't want our parents to be influencing us, our family of origin shows up all the time in how we act, how we think, how we talk, all of that. You seen these commercials? Love these commercials. This one right here, just, I'm laughing hard. We don't need to print the internet. Oh, I love it. And then he's cleaning his he's washing off and polishing in his trash cans. And over here, we're going to a seminar to become your parents. Oh, my goodness. But you see that Progressive Insurance is catching on to this idea. You are influenced by your parents. Because one of the most powerful influences that impact our way of life is that family unit. Your parents influence you, and they know it. Multiple generations have come. You learn from your parents. They learn from their parents. Their parents learn. It's just endless. You are, some of it's good, some of it's helpful, and some of it not so much. Okay, and I'm pretty sure that you all feel somewhat in that range. But in verse 18, Peter describes the way of life that they have inherited as useless. Right? Worthless. Leave it all behind because what you have learned from your ancestors, Peter says, is taking you farther and farther away from God. And you have a new father that's teaching you a new way. So what is holiness then? And I have some things written here. Holiness is getting rid of, letting go of all of the harmful, the destructive, the broken, the sinful attitudes, habits, and practices we have inherited from our ancestors and learning a new way from the household of God. Shaped by the heart and the mind and the character of our Father who's in heaven, who is holy. And that's why holy is not so much a rules-based, but a relationship-based, not religious-based holiness. Where we have a new Father, a new brother, Jesus Christ, who shows us what holiness looks like walking around on the earth. Holiness is entering a new family, learning from them and us and each other. Those that have been doing it longer than we have. I don't know, when I catch this from time to time, I say, yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. I'm not a ma'am. Why'd you call me sir? It's this point, right? My family taught me to do so, right? Anyways, I just thought that was something I had to throw in there. Second point, second observation. The prime directive of relational holiness is love. It's the whole point of being holy. Relational holiness leads to love. Peter says you have to be born into a family. You have a new way of life. And here's where this new holiness shows up. You love one another deeply from the heart, he says. You're called to be holy because God is holy. Now, love each other deep from the heart. And it makes sense, and it should be no surprise that holiness and love are connected, right? Because God is holy and God is love. And to say God is holy and God is love is not to say that there's two different things about God. No, it's to say the same thing two different ways. I'll let you think about that for a second. That might be a little confusing. But we're not saying two different things about God. We're saying the same thing, just two different ways. God is holy and God is love. A holy God is love and a loving God is holy. Man, I just tried many ways to get this to be visible to us this morning. And as we see the fierce, the pure, holy love of God and in what it separates God from humanity. God's nature is different than ours because of the way that he loves. His thoughts are not our thoughts. His ways are not our ways. And the way that he loves is not the way that we love each other. It's different. And so the call to holiness is a call to love. And that's why at the beginning of chapter 2, Peter says, if you're going to be holy and love from the heart, there are some things that you have got to get rid of. Things that you picked up from your family, your parents, your brothers and sisters. You picked up some things that weren't very good. Deceit, deceiving people. Envy, wanting what other people have. Slander, talking about them behind their back. And they've never struggled with those things. Right? That's just Bible stuff. Old, ancient things. Notice that all of those things are relational sins. They're all relational. They all have to do with how we treat each other. They can destroy love and they can get in the way of community. And we talked about this morning in class. If you're going to be holy the way that God is holy, and if you're going to love each other deeply from the heart, Peter says, you're going to have to get rid of that stuff. Because you can't be like God and be holy and loving like God and practice those things. You got to get rid of it. You got to let go of it. When I first started to think about what it looks like for a Christian to be holy, my first thought is how we live around people who don't share our beliefs, right? Obviously. It's how we set ourselves apart, and that's absolutely part of it. Because much of what Peter is talking about in his letter is how we live in a culture that's not supportive of our faith. But don't forget where Peter begins his description of holiness. Okay? He starts with not how we live out there. Okay? He starts with how we live in here. That's where he starts. He's talking to a bunch of Christians that are newbies. To be holy like God is to love, and to love people from the heart is to be holy like God. Holiness is learning to live in a new family. It's being born into a new family that does things differently. And becoming holy is trying to figure out how things work in this new family. And we're all under the influence of our new Father who's in heaven. It's a difficult thing to do, right? We're not going to be able to walk out the door and then automatically hear a lesson and we are now holy. I'm sorry to say, that's not going to happen. However, it can take us most of our lives to try to figure that out. It's a day-to-day thing, every day. Look at marriages. Why are marriages hard? Because you have to be thinking about someone else before yourself. Day to day, you got to be working on it. It's not going to just happen. One, I love you. One, I cherish you. And then it's perfect from there on out. That's why we have these images that we have, these institutions that teach us these types of things. It gets messy, right? Premarital counseling. They do genealogy. I don't know if they did this, all the time. But Rachel and I went to premarital counseling with a preacher that we were going to a congregation, and he just handled ours. And we talked about our family trees, right? Because that's what's going on here. Her family tree is marrying my family tree, right? And we got to learn about, how did your family deal with this issue? How did your family deal with that issue? Just back and forth. Very eye-opening. Habits and secrets and things in your family tree are going to be able to shape the way that your new family is now going to be handling business. Because if you don't look at them and you don't name them, then you're not going to know how to deal with it when it comes up. So what is holiness? Again, I asked the question, what's holiness? Well, I think learning to live in a new family is what holiness is really all about. What's church, right? Church is the family of God. Is church easy? Church is like a marriage, right? We all have different opinions. We all have different places in life. Church is hard, right? You can definitely look through the articles and newspapers from the last 10 years or more, probably the last 30 years, and you will see that it's hard. It can be messy. We're all sitting around the table of God with all of our baggage, all of our mess, all of our struggles. And we're all bringing it to the same table and saying, here we are, ready to go. And Peter says, yes, now be holy as God is holy. That's what Peter says. Let your heavenly Father shape how you do family here, not your family of origin. If Peter was writing to Gentile Christians who became Christians, but beforehand had been idolaters, it makes a lot of sense to say that the way of life you learned from your ancestors, those ways are broken and you need to break yourself from those things. That makes sense. But for many of us here this morning, we hear from Peter this contrast between our old way of life and our new way of life, and it doesn't seem to be that clean of a cut, does it? Done for me. So many of us were raised in Christian homes. Christian parents. We were raised going to church. We were singing, "This world's not my home." And we picked up some really good, positive, helpful attitudes and habits and behaviors from our family of origin. There is no question about that. But we can't get rid of all of them, because many of us sitting here, I would have to say every one of us maybe today sitting here, were because of one of those individuals. My mom and dad definitely influenced me in my thinking spiritually. So, can't throw everything out the window. There are good things that come from our ancestors. But it's to say that not everything's positive and helpful and useful. You know, through the years, we've talked about it briefly in our discussions in class here and other times, but we've picked up some ways of thinking about and speaking about and treating other people that aren't like us in certain ways, right? We picked up some ways of dealing with other people that are harmful, that we received from our family. We may have picked up some unloving ways of communicating with each other, working through conflict, unhelpful ways of making our point and arguing to get our way. And that's just the way we are, and we bring those things into this family because we've been shaped by our family of origin, people that have given us a chance and a start. And a part of what being holy means is identifying all of those unhelpful, harmful characteristics and getting rid of them. It may not be idolatry, right? Maybe it is. Maybe it's, you got to be right every time, right? Whatever. I mean, there's a infinitely many number of things. But it takes work. And it's hard. And it's a lifelong process. It's not going to happen overnight. Some of us may have been handed by the religious traditions that we were raised in, and may have been handed rules to follow. I know my wife comes from a different tradition of Christianity that I grew up in. And her list of rules is a lot bigger than mine. And that's just the way it is. Traditions to be observed that did not originate in the heart of God, by the way. They got originated in the imagination of man. They weren't blessings. They're burdens. And we use them and we pile them up on our shoulders and we try to hold ourselves up and compare ourselves with each other. I'm superior to this group or this person or that. That's what we use that stuff for. You're not as good as I am. And this was one of the problems that the Pharisees had. They wanted to be holy. It's their whole point. That was their whole purpose. They wanted to portray holiness so bad, right? They would go to great lengths to show how holy they were. But their definition of holy wasn't God's definition. It was theirs. And that's where they went wrong. And that's where we can go wrong as well. If we come up with our own version of what holiness is and don't listen to what Peter and Paul and all the other apostles are teaching us about holiness. And Jesus said, your commands are taught by men and your hearts are far from God. Part of being holy, as God is holy, is letting go of some of those rules, some of those traditions, some of those that are not blessings. They're not bringing joy out of your heart. But they're burdens to us and they are burdens to others. It excludes others from being part of God's family. And that's just needless. It's not easy to do, right? You gotta take your time. You gotta think it through. It takes a lot of hard work. It might take a lifetime of work. But I love the way we're ending here in 1 Peter chapter 2 this morning. He says, just like newbies, this again, born again language he's using. Like little babies, you tasted something that was really good and you liked it. Now continue to crave that spiritual milk. That spiritual milk is the gospel. The good news. You need to crave it. Just like little babies want milk. Because that is what is going to grow you up to maturity. It's going to give you the strength for holiness. Haven't we all tasted the Lord and haven't we all felt what it was like to be a part of God's family that's full of grace and love and mercy? And having tasted this, I want to, I get to attitude. Not I have to. The food that the Lord feeds us when we gather around His table, because that is what gives us strength to keep going, to become more like our Father in heaven. Let's stand and sing together.